Hello everyone, today we're going to be taking another look at Exit Magazine and how ERD took inspiration from it. This is a part 2 to my first Exit video, and I definitely recommend watching that one first as I lay the groundwork of kind of what the magazine is and how it fits into the ethos of ERD. The whole reason this video even exists is because I missed a lot of the references that were in the magazine from my first video. So one of you guys actually pointed out the things that I missed, so I want to take a moment to thank Alden Burton-Fowler, as this whole video wouldn't be possible without him. He has his own clothing brand called Obscura Studios, which I'll link in the description. The designs are definitely pretty similar to ERD, but at least he has a deep knowledge of the source material that he's pulling from. He definitely knows a lot about the underground movement and all these zines, and he was into this stuff way before I even was into it or put anything out. This isn't a paid promo or anything. I just wanted to show my appreciation with him showing me all these things that I missed, as well as showing me a lot of other things from different zines that I'll cover in later videos. So with that all out of the way, let's actually get to the references. I'll be starting with volume 2, as volume 1 still doesn't have anything, but on page 13 we get the story of The Tomb by H.P. Lovecraft. It's illustrated by Byron Weber. I brought this section up last time because I did notice one of the references, but there's a couple other pieces that also use graphics from this story that I didn't point out. So as you can see, these pieces correspond with these panels. I believe all of these pieces are made out of Loro Piana cashmere, so they would just be a grail to own. On page 23, we get Adam Parfrave's On Virtue That Makes Small. This piece as a whole is just a collage with images chosen by Parfrey and quotes from Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And the graphics are just a mix of the classic tropes, World War II stuff, along with religious imagery. All with that kind of unsettling aesthetic. All that said, the actual reference is on page 23 with this TV graphic that is used on the Le Television shirt. On the shirt, it's repurposed with a whole bunch of other graphics added along with it, but I unfortunately don't know the origin for any of these other ones. Moving on to volume 3, on page 13 we get Make Anyone Do Anything by Robert Luther 267. I tried looking up who Robert Luther 267 was, but I couldn't really find much about him, so I'm just assuming he was someone on the local punk scene, or that's a pseudonym for someone else in the movement. This graphic is featured on the Teen Shot for Leather jacket hoodie, but it isn't directly copy and pasted. It almost looks like someone just drew the image on. This is probably Henri drawing it from the reference image itself, but I can't be 100% sure, but I think I've heard that he likes to do that, and he does do it on another garment featured later in the video. Then skipping straight to issue 5, because 4 didn't have anything. On page 14 we get Ass, Nile, Nietzsche, Contra Exit Part 1. It's described as quotes and aphorisms of Friedrich Nietzsche as interpreted by modern artists. Basically, it's just a compilation of Nietzsche quotes that are each paired with an image. The concept is from John Ass Nile, who owns Ass Nile Productions, which is a publication that sells and produces things on the classic tropes of this genre. Think cults, religion, racial stuff, avant-garde art, and so on. On his website, he sells DVDs and CDs of all this stuff related to this content, and at the front of the website, he describes it as the archive of aesthetic nihilism. Delve into the mass schizophrenic breakdown at the end of the second millennium. I just found that kind of interesting, getting to look at who he was, but with that tangent out of the way, let's look at the actual reference. The graphic in particular is this thing of dollar signs and swastikas, and it's featured on these 3 shirts. The quote under the graphic says, "We should look upon those who own too much, just as upon those who own nothing." The graphic itself is made by Todd A. of the band Cop Shoot Cop. They were a noise rock group out of New York from around 1987. They're pretty obscure, but did go on tour with Iggy Pop, so that's pretty cool. Then jumping a couple pages, on page 86, we get the part 2 to the part 1 of the Ace Nile Contra Nietzsche thing. This time, this graphic of a skull is used on this sweater. The quote says, "The worst enemy you will ever encounter will always be yourself." This graphic is actually from John Wayne Gacy, who was the serial killer that would dress up as a clown, who murdered and assaulted many children. On page 94, we get this drawing that is featured on these black patch trousers. Once again, it looks like Henri used the image as a reference and drew on his own version of it. The quote is, "One hears only those questions for which one is able to find answers." The art is by T.M. Caldwell, who was an author and illustrator in the same vein of Exit. I couldn't really find much on him, but he has a book called The Devil's Tattoo Book that has a lot of his writings and illustrations, and aesthetically it just looks really interesting, so I actually might pick it up. It's only like $15. On to volume 6. On page 62, we get the same thing as the Nietzsche like quote in a picture, but this time with Manson quotes instead. We get this graphic that is used on the sleeve of the Eulogy long sleeve. The quote says, "You get back what you put out." The art seems to be by Shelley Soma, who appears to be the lead singer of a band called Glod. I don't know much about them, but they're described on their Discogs as Ritual Soundscapes from Detroit. On page 63, this graphic is seen on the top right of the Shrunken Nietzsche shirt. The quote says, "Am I on the side of death? I didn't know God had a side." The art is from Salvatore Canzonieri. He was a very prominent on the punk scene and was a guitarist for Electric Frankenstein. On page 71, we get this graphic that is used on these mohair sweaters. The quote says, "If I don't have any rights, then you don't have any rights, and what you do to me will be done to you." It says the art is by John Metal, but I looked all around and I couldn't really find anything on him, and I have no idea who he is, so if anyone knows, please let me know. So that's it for all the ones I know that are out of Exit. Even then, I'm sure me and him probably still missed a few, honestly, but I mean, we'll just never be sure. Also, I'm sure that ERD will revisit Exit and take more graphics in future collections, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I will be too, and I'll probably make a video if that happens. Stay tuned for more ERD stuff, as I have a lot more references that I want to uncover. Anyways, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I have other videos like this. Make sure to check them out. Here are my Instagrams on the screen. This one's just a personal one, and then in the middle is my archive page where I'm selling a lot of stuff and just showing stuff off. And then finally at the bottom is archive reference. That's where I post a lot of these references that I talk about in the video. I've been really slow to do this, but I will definitely catch up and get them all posted. So that's basically it. Goodbye.